Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's a very exciting weekend. Ohio State's favored by 45-something points. And I checked, and I do technically have eligibility left. So I think there's a small but non-zero chance I might get to play some in the fourth quarter this weekend. What about you? Are you technically eligible?
I'm actually starting for Arkansas State, so this is a big day.
Wow, yeah. Congratulations.
Going to be a busy day, but, duty calls, and so I'll be out there slinging the rock, as they say, and, based on what I saw last year, I should be pretty good against the secondary. Now, I missed last week's game.
I have some bad news.
Yeah, I am looking forward to a noon game. Get it going right away against Arkansas State this weekend. What is the over-under on that? Do you have that offhand? I mean, is it obviously in the 60s or so?
Yeah, I think it was in the 60s. I feel like the score projection was essentially, if you combine the line and the over-under, I believe the score projection was like a 51-10 kind of score or something like that, 51-11. So I think the over-under was kind of in the low 60s.
Yeah. Okay, because 51-11 is my exact score that I predicted, so no. That would be very difficult, unless you're somehow using Iowa's defense at some point, or Iowa's offense, I'm not sure which. But Arkansas State comes into this game 1-0, an impressive 58-3 win over Grambling last week. They rushed for 349 yards and 6 touchdowns. They threw for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. Most people will have heard of the Arkansas State quarterback, James Blackman, former Florida State Seminole. Of course, former Ohio State running back Brian Snead is part of the Arkansas State rushing attack. They also have they've got several running backs, but their leading rusher last week was Johnny Lang, rushed for 124 yards on 13 attempts. So there's skill there. They had a 100-yard receiver who we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. But this, of course, is going to be about the Buckeyes and not so much about Arkansas State. But there will be times where I think, Tom, that this is a more talented matchup for Ohio State. In particular, I'll just throw one out there. Tanner McAllister will have a more difficult matchup, I think, because Arkansas State has slot receivers. I think, you look at a guy like Champ Flemings, who's like 5'6", caught 7 passes for 122 yards. I just think if anybody is more tested on the defense, I think it's going to be Tanner McAllister. Everybody else may have a much easier day, but I think for him, because he didn't get to do really anything last Saturday. So we'll get to see him work on this Saturday, and that'll be good to see. Interesting to get an idea of where he is, because we didn't see much of him last week.
It is going to be interesting, because it's going to be a little bit of a different offense than they saw last week against Notre Dame. Obviously not with any kind of similar skill level. I don't think the offensive line play is going to be quite as good. I don't think the tight end play is going to be quite as good. I don't think the pretty much anything play is going to be quite as good, but it will at least be a little bit different. And I think maybe to me more the interesting story is how they choose to defend certain things. Because, looking at the Notre Dame game, it was, well, are they going to go to 3 linebackers when, Notre Dame is really trying to run the ball, or, trying to really not pressing them downfield all that much? Are they going to, switch to a 3 linebacker look? Or are they going to put Court Williams in? And the answer was kind of like, no, they're just going to stick with what they do and just kind of do that well. And so I guess it'll be sort of interesting to see whether they change anything about what they're trying to do on defense this week. But yeah, I don't think you started saying it's going to be a bigger challenge for Tanner McAllister. And I was like, bigger compared to what? Like, not compared to last week, bigger compared to the other, the challenge that other guys may be facing this weekend. Yes, that was. I'm like, where is he going with this one? What did I not see about Arkansas State this week? And the answer is, I don't think I didn't see anything. I think we've pretty good handle on where things stand with them. But yeah, it is going to be a little bit interesting to see where Ohio State do they change at all what they're going to try and do, personnel groupings, any of that kind of stuff, or do they just kind of like ride with what they rode with week one and try and you're going to have minor tweaks, but mostly keep the same guys in the field in the same spots.
I think this is an opportunity to see that you can defend multiple styles of offense with the same personnel. And so I would be surprised if they change anything. I think we're expecting Lathan Ransom to get the start. Ryan Day is expecting Lathan Ransom to get the start for Josh Proctor. Proctor will still play. And when I say we didn't see Tanner McAllister last week, he played like every snap. We just didn't get to see him in coverage. And that's why I'm saying we'll get to see more of that this week, get to see how he does. So Lathan Ransom in the starting lineup. There are some other, we should probably talk about the health injury updates that we don't really have any news on per se, but at this point we should probably expect anybody who is questionable to be held out. That's including Luke Whippler at center, who after the game was in a boot this past week, and Matt Jones has taken some reps at center this week in practice. You're talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba still dealing with his hamstring, no reason to push him. We saw Cam Babb still in a knee brace on Wednesday, so no reason to push him. Julian Fleming, I think, is probably back, maybe, as long as nothing happens Saturday morning, and who knows if there's a chill in the air and there's some tightness, they might hold him back. But at this point in time, I'm expecting everybody to sit. And what does that mean for the offensive line then, if there's no Luke Whippler?
Yeah, I think if there's no Luke Whippler, and I expect there to be no Luke Whippler, because as you said, like, why risk it? You're a 44.5 point favorite. Why risk it? By the way, the over-under has either moved or I had it the wrong number in my head. The over-under is now 68.5, so it's more of like a 56-12. So adjust your pregame picks accordingly. As far as playing without Luke Whippler goes, I think that's what's gonna happen. You slide Matt Jones over from left guard to center. You put Enoch Vamahi in at left guard, and yeah, I think that more or less I don't think that's going to make a material difference in what the offensive line looks like. The one place where that could be a little bit of a loss for them is Donovan Jackson, first-time starter at right guard. He does not have that many game reps. We talk all the time about the importance of cohesion and working next to guys and being, the consistency of working next to guys and really knowing what that guy next to you is going to be doing because you've just been next to him so many times. You miss out on that by not having Whippler start, but that's kind of essentially the end of it. And, the upside of it is, well, now you're getting Matt Jones some reps at center just in case. You're getting Enoch Vamahi a start and a bunch of reps there. So, because, Enoch Vamahi is someone we've been talking about, it feels like, for 2 years as someone who was kind of ready to be in that starting lineup, and there just wasn't necessarily a role for him. So now he'll get a chance to get a start under his belt and get a bunch of reps in, because I think he only played 3 snaps or something like that against Notre Dame. So this will be a good opportunity for him. But it is not without you are missing out on something with Donovan Jackson and Luke Whippler not being next to each other for another week.
Yeah, and Enoch came in for Matt Jones at right guard for like a few snaps. Like you said, Matt Jones played last week with a fever, and gave it his all for the one game that they really needed it, and now we'll see him at center. I just think, or could see him at center. We're talking almost like it's going to happen. Don't know for sure that it will happen, but I think it's something that would be really good information to have for the coaches and really good information or experience for Jones to have at center. And he's very confident handling that. He does it in practice now and again and is very comfortable making the call. So he's very confident in doing that. And I think they would be okay, because when Enoch Vamahi came in, he was fine for his few plays there. Confidence and experience, I think, is also going to help Emeka Egbuka if he is in the slot, because last week he was kind of thrust into that role because Jackson Smith and Jigba was out, and you saw some miscommunication issues and some maybe things that could have been run better, even though he finished with 9 catches for 90 yards and had the touchdown and moved the chains, quite a bit. But, this is now a second game for him. And one of the things that Ryan Day said this week is, those two, Emeka and Marvin Harrison, last year they got some time, but now as starters, they're having to, realize that you've got to play 50, 60, 70 snaps, and you're not going to just get a few snaps and then come out. You've got to be on the ball and on point every single snap, and you're not going to get a rest until basically the offense is off the field. So this is something that they're having to adjust to. It probably would have gone better for them if the Arkansas State game was the opener and Notre Dame was the second game, because then you go into that game having that experience. But now they've got that experience, and they go into this one. I'm expecting a much better performance from those two, even if the statistics don't say it, because who knows how long they're going to be out there.
Right. How many snaps are they really going to get? This might be a game where if you're the backup, if you're the true freshman like those guys were last year, you might almost get more snaps in this game than the veterans do. I would expect that you're going to maybe see Ibuka and Marvin Harrison out there a little longer, and Julian Fleming potentially out there a little longer than, say Jackson Smith-Njigba, because just those guys need those reps. So you're going to see them out there a decent amount, but you're probably also going to see a bunch of Jaden Ballard. You're probably going to see a bunch of, Caleb Brown, and I would guess you're probably going to see all of the true freshman wide receivers to at least some degree at some point, because they're going to want to, this is the game that I think everyone has sort of circled on the calendar as this is the one where everyone gets to play. So if you're not playing in this one, you are either injured or very, very, very far down the depth chart would be my expectation. So, but this is an opportunity just to, okay, you mentioned the fact that they didn't have to play a ton of snaps last year, and you're coming in for a few plays, and so that's an adjustment. The other thing that's an adjustment here is when they were playing a lot last year, it was in games where Ohio State's up, they're playing in the second half of the Michigan State game, and Ohio State's up 49-0 at the half, and yeah, you're playing, but yes, you want to maintain the intensity and all of that, but you can see the scoreboard from where you are on the field. You kind of know that it is not, every individual play is not make or break. And, is every individual play against Arkansas State going to be make or break? Probably not. But at least, you're in the game where at the point where it's a competitive game and it still could theoretically be, anyone could win. So that's going to be a little bit different for those guys as well, just playing a little bit earlier in the game. Marvin Harrison obviously did that in the Rose Bowl, but, for Emeka Ibuka, he is, this is a little earlier than you've typically seen him as a wide receiver. So this will be, that'll be a good opportunity for him. And then, I think to your point, I think there's going to be, the, CJ Stroud knew exactly what play we were talking about when someone asked him about Ibuka, not kind of sitting down in the zone on that crossing route right before halftime. I'm sure that has been something that, has been communicated to him and is something that they're working on. And, that's what coaches want, is a week one game where you win, but there's lots of stuff to learn from. And it feels like that's what this young wide receiver core kind of got.
This week, you'll see them sit in a zone on the crossing routes when they should have kept going, and CJ Stroud's going to throw like 3 interceptions to the defense because guys are going to be stopping their routes. And then next week, they'll finally be halfway decent, maybe. It's all a learning process. One of the other things that I want to discuss is Mike Hall, who has been, baby Aaron Donald, as what his teammates were calling him. And Ryan Day didn't want to scoff, but what he did say is, you can't listen to that. And Mike Hall needs to play as well this week as he did last week, as well next week as he did last week. You have to do it week to week. So that's one of the things that I will be watching for in this game is that level still the same? Because he should do very, very well against Arkansas State. And if he's quiet in like one-on-one situations, you can be quiet being double and triple teamed as long as other people are getting through. But I want to see him be just as disruptive. And I'm not doubting that he will, because I don't think it was a fluke. He just did exactly what he was doing all in camp. And so I want to see him continue that in a game where everybody knows Ohio State's going to win, but you still have to go out and make it happen. And I'm also interested to see if the response from Tyleik Williams, who will probably get more snaps this week, but has been somebody that Buckeye fans have been talking about. Is there I wonder if there's hey, is Tyleik Williams like thinking like the way people are talking about Mike Hall is how they used to be talking about me. I want to get them back talking about me. I wouldn't. You would hope that's not something on their mind, other than I also want to make plays like Mike Hall. That is the real motivation, is like, I want to be doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think the Mike Hall piece of that goes toward Ryan Day's idea of competitive stamina, and we've talked about that a lot in the context of finishing drives, finishing games. But he talked about it this week in the context of you can't take weeks off. You have to be there every week. You have to show up every week ready to go 100%. no kind of knowing like, okay, 44.5 point favorite, you're not going to lose this game. So, I don't really have to go all the way, go all out every play. You've got to really go. And so I think we will see a little bit of Mike Hall this week. I expect you will probably see more from Mike Hall again this week that will be in line with what you saw last week. Tyleik Williams, that was kind of one of the things with him last year, was that it wasn't a consistent performance, and it wasn't a down to down, game to game. It wasn't a consistent thing week to week, where that was one of the things that kept him off the field. I was actually a little surprised that we didn't see that much of Tyleik Williams last week against Notre Dame. So this is an opportunity to largely during the week, I would think. During practice, demonstrate that you deserve to be on the field, and then once you're on the field on Saturday, really be able to make the most of those opportunities. Because Tyleik Williams in the Akron game last year did make the most of those opportunities. That was kind of his breakout game. He looked again against Akron last year the way that Mike Hall looked against Notre Dame, where it was like, this is this crazy disruptor in the middle of the defensive line, and then you didn't see him anymore really for the most of for long stretches during the season, and everyone's wondering, where's Tyleik Williams? Well, he wasn't consistent enough. So yeah, that consistency week to week is going to be a very, very big part of who gets on the field and who's making an impact on the field for those second-year defensive linemen.
I want to talk about two other disruptors. The first, Jack Sawyer. I think this is the game where he needs to get home. Bring the quarterback down, get a sack in there, moving him all around and disrupting the offensive line, as we've seen. But I think it's been a game now, Tom. It's time for him to hit the quarterback. Everybody's tired of waiting. He's due. I do think there's probably going to be a defensive touchdown in this from the harassment that James Blackman is facing. We should see something like that. The other thing is, somebody asked on the board, we had an all-day staff chat at BuckeyeHuddle.com yesterday, asking, can Tommy Eichenberg, or who's going to lead the team in sacks, and could it be Tommy Eichenberg? Tommy Eichenberg had 2 sacks in the Notre Dame game, and as I was trying to figure this out, you've got so many defensive ends and so many defensive tackles who are maybe, I don't know that anybody's going to have more than 6, 7, 8, maybe, but Eichenberg on these blitzes could be a guy who maybe 8 or 9 wins it, and that's not an unreasonable number for a linebacker, especially when you've got 2 right out of the gate. So, Tom, I'm going to ask you, can Tommy Eichenberg lead this team in sacks? And then also feel free to go into Jack Sawyer if you want.
Yeah, Jack Sawyer's got to get one before he can lead the team in sacks. I thought you were going to set me up with, how earlier in the week it was like, is this Ohio State defense fool's gold? Just because you said you use it for a show title, I thought you were going to say, is Jack Sawyer just a bust? Is that no sacks week 1? Is it a lost cause for Jack Sawyer? No, that was good. That was good. We've gotten you out of that mode a little bit. As far as Tommy Eichenberg goes, it feels like it's not just theoretically possible. It's like there's a decent possibility. I mean, like a decent percentage chance that it is Tommy Eichenberg because of the way they're playing defense this year. We've talked about the defensive line, going from get upfield as much as you can to block destruction and kind of tying up those offensive linemen, and then creating, keeping those linebackers clean to make plays. I don't think it was a coincidence that Tommy Eichenberg had a couple sacks last week. I mean, one of them, he came, the defensive lineman, occupied all the blockers. I think it was JT Tuimoloau on one side of the line, occupied both the right guard and right tackle, and then Tommy Eichenberg, it was just like an interstate highway up the middle of through the middle of the Notre Dame offensive line, and Tommy Eichenberg just went straight up the gut and right into the quarterback's face and got a sack out of that. That's kind of what this defense is designed to do. With Jack Sawyer moving around a little bit, I mean, he's designed to kind of occupy some of those blockers, but, he may be, just the quickness and, potentially being out on the edge. Potentially you're getting some of those as well, but, I think at this point, having seen the defense in action now once, I think there's a better chance that Tommy Eichenberg leads the team in sacks than Jack Sawyer, right?
No, yeah, I would agree with that, especially when, that Jack position, that Leo position had 19 and a half sacks last year for Oklahoma State, and it is designed to do that. I'm we'll see more of it. But even the second sack for Tommy Eichenberg was just chasing Tyler Buckner down and beating him to the sticks, basically, and tackled him for a 1 yard loss on the sideline. So you've got a guy that can chase quarterbacks down as they're being flushed out by this defensive line. So he can get them a number of ways. It doesn't just have to be on a blitz. It can just be chasing the ball down, which is a linebacker's job. And it doesn't always have to be about aggression. It just has to be about read and recognition and anticipation and being in the right spot. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that goes. And, last year I asked the defensive tackles if they were going to if there's a competition with the defensive ends. This year it might be the linebackers against, the defensive line as a whole. And we'll see how that goes. So Tom, this is a special week in that this is the first weekend that a bunch of freshmen are going to play. We get to, I want to see this. Are we going to see Sonny Styles? Are we going to see CJ Hicks? All of these receivers. We're going to see Dallin Hayden for sure, the running back. I'm wondering how much we see him because I think Ryan Day said either on his radio show or the Lightning Round, they want to get out to a fast start. And a fast start to me means throwing the ball, especially when you're not going to be playing CJ Stroud much, which means fewer carries maybe for Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson this week than they had last week. And so I'm wondering, how long do you play them and then move to Dallin Hayden? Because you don't want necessarily any of these guys to be playing into the fourth quarter, but, you want to get them work. It's an interesting management thing there where, well, the backup is Mayan Williams, so he's going to be the last one playing because Travion Henderson is too valuable. I don't know that they have that right now. It's just going to be, we'll go with it's your turn for this last series, and then we're going to go to Dallin. It's just I see them as co-starters now.
Right now I guess that's kind of how you have to treat them because they ended up with basically the same number of carries, if not the exact same number of carries. So I think you kind of have to treat them like that until you see otherwise. Because it does feel like they're looking at them as something of like a thunder and lightning kind of duo, like a Lendale White and Reggie Bush kind of duo in the backfield. I feel like you're probably going to see, generally I always think you get the starters in through halftime for the most part. Unless it's really, really lopsided, you're not pulling starters in the middle of the second quarter. So you probably get them to more or less halftime, give or take. Sometimes there's one drive in the third quarter, and then you pull them after that. Something like that is probably in the ballpark of what I'd expect. And then, and then at that point, Dallin Hayden's getting a pretty good run because there is not a fourth healthy scholarship running back on this team right now. Theoretically, they could throw Chip Trainum in there. They've worked him out at running back a little bit in the fall, and it sounded like he was impressive in what they needed, but that also felt like that was maybe a little bit of a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing rather than he's our fourth running back and we'll use him as needed during games. Over under on number of carries for Chip Trainum this year, Tony, 0.5. What do you expect?
I would say 0 at this point because you'd have to anticipate an injury because this is a game where you would play your fourth running back if you had him, but I don't think they're going to put him in there. I will ask you, Tom, where in the bold predictions range of 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, where would Dallin Hayden leads the team in rushing tomorrow fall?
I think that's probably a 1-pointer because I think there's a real good possibility Dallin Hayden has more carries than the other guys do. And those second half carries in games like this, if it's 42-3 Ohio State at half, then, yes, those second half carries get somewhat predictable. You're not generally doing anything crazy. There's a lot of off tackle left and off tackle right. And so you're a little bit predictable, but you're also going up against, in a lot of cases, the backups for the other team and your backups. The number twos for Ohio State might have an even bigger gap in talent from the number twos for Arkansas State than the ones do. So it is, I always think of Master Teague in 2019 where he was like leading the Big Ten in rushing yards per carry and was like number 3 or 4 in the league. And it was like all his carries were in the second half of blowouts. That's sort of what I always think about when I think about this, because you don't think they're necessarily piling up a ton of yards, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, he had 12 carries for 150 yards somehow. Like what, when? And it was skewed by 160 yarder or whatever it is. I think that would be. I mean, Dallin Hayden being the leading rusher for Ohio State, that feels like a 1-pointer to me, because just about any other week of the season, that's a crazy 3-point outlier for a bold prediction. This week, you're probably dividing carries. You're just trying to keep guys fresh, give guys a chance to play a little bit, but not, the Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams kind of guys, and just trying to keep them fresh and healthy. And, for the games where you're actually going to really need them in a couple weeks against Wisconsin, for example.
In 2019, Master Teague was 15th nationally in second half rushing, to give you an idea. Fourth quarter, he was 10th, ahead of guys like Jonathan Taylor, who's an average running back. But, he was just the guy that put the defense to sleep, basically, back then. So with that in mind then, Tom, who are we looking forward to seeing in terms of the freshmen? I'm waiting to see CJ Hicks come in on a blitz, waiting to see, Sonny Styles pick 6, grab one and head back up the sideline. Or maybe a CJ Hicks pick 6. Caden Curry got to play a little bit. Defensive end got to play a little bit on special teams. Won't be surprised to see him out there. And I'm defensively Hero Canoe, possibly another one who could be in there. When you see these new numbers, like who's 92, that's Caden Curry. Who's 93, that's Hero Canoe. Although you should just be able to notice by how large Hero Canoe is. He doesn't really need a number. You should be able to recognize him. And then, of course, I will also mention Caleb Brown at receiver, but who knows how much we're going to see these guys and how much they're going to be throwing. But could certainly see some quick screens to make it look like, well, we're not going to throw downfield, so let's just get the ball quickly to these guys. And Caleb Brown could do something with that. So, Tom, of the freshmen, what are you looking forward to seeing, and who do you think is going to do something?
Well, I mean, I guess Devon Brown is the easy answer here, because someone has to throw the quick screen to Caleb Brown, so it might as well be Devon Brown. He's and I think if you're a coach like Butch Jones, who's been around the block a few times and has been on the Power 5 side of a game like this, where you're trying to, he understands that, if Ohio State's throwing in the fourth quarter with a 50-6 lead, he understands that they're not being a jerks. They're just trying to get younger guys some work. If you get your third teamers in there, you can kind of do whatever you want to, basically. Probably don't onside kick it or run any crazy trick plays, but other than that, you're pretty much okay. So I expect, Devon Brown, I think, Devon Brown throws more. Devon Brown attempts, within 3 the number of pass attempts that CJ Stroud has on Saturday. That's, maybe that's a 2-point bold prediction or 1-point bold prediction, just because they're going to want to get him some work. He's not getting, as the third guy, you don't get that much work during the course of a season. So, I mean, you go back over the years and it's like Joe Burrow in 2017, what did he have? 11 pass attempts all season as the third guy, something like that. When you have an opportunity to get these guys in, you want to let them do a little bit of work and start, because, this is the start of getting him prepared to potentially be a starter next year. And this is a part of getting Kyle McCord, ready not only to potentially be a starter next year, but also to be the guy who is one snap away from potentially coming into a game this year. So I think Devon Brown's a good one. On the defensive side, you stole pretty much all of my answers, but I will say Jair Brown. Yes. Jair Brown, someone who lost his black stripe early. I think Kai Stokes is a good answer on the defensive side of the ball. And, I think also there are some of those second-year guys who we really haven't gotten a chance to see. J.K. Johnson, Jordan Hancock. I would love to see those guys, and I think you're going to see quite a bit of those guys on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to some of those guys. It's not, the freshmen are not the only intriguing ones. There's a lot of even second-year guys who, Jaden Ballard. Let's see Jaden Ballard get an extended run. You saw him make a couple plays against Notre Dame. Okay, we still haven't seen Jaden Ballard catch a 9 route. So, okay, let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how much. Can you just go to Kyle McCord for the start of the third quarter? Generally, they don't. Like you said, they'll put the starters out there for at least one drive in the third. But maybe the score dictates that you don't. Maybe Kyle McCord gets the third quarter, Devon Brown gets the fourth quarter. And not that there's a real competition between the two. Sure, they're competing, but Kyle McCord is the backup. So maybe you have to technically give him more snaps just to appease everybody. But I think there's enough clock to get everybody in there. What you can't do, though, as Ryan Day says, you can't go chasing points and chasing situations and trying to make that happen. It has to happen naturally and organically, and yet it should, because I think we've probably both have predicted an Ohio State win in this game. I don't want to speak for Tom, but we have turned in our staff picks. My score, 59-7. I think Ohio State's offense gets going and their special teams gets going with a field goal this week. And so, I can't do all of the Iowa math involved in the number of safeties and whatnot that would require. But I do think the offense and the passing game gets going. The second half, it just continues on, and they do just fine. And there's a late touchdown somewhere in there, or maybe early, but only one.
Yeah, I had it 56-10 Ohio State, and I mean it just feels like this is a game that's 35-3 at the half, or 42-7 at the half, or whatever it is, and then you get a couple touchdowns in the second half, and never the game is no longer in doubt after the about the 5-minute mark of the first quarter. You mentioned when Kyle McCord comes in. One thing that I've wondered is, do they keep the ones out with Kyle McCord for a drive or two, where the last drive before halftime, you pull CJ Stroud, and then Kyle McCord gets to work with the ones, and maybe he works with the ones for the first drive of the second half as well, and then you pull the ones out and you put the twos in with Kyle McCord. Just because, we have seen you need to establish, get on the same page as the wide receivers and get cohesion and have the offensive line used to working with Kyle McCord and all that kind of stuff. It feels like that this might be an opportunity to do that, because he got to do that last year against Akron for a full game. I'm sure Ohio State is hoping he does not get to do it for a full game this year, but that would at least be an opportunity to get him a couple reps with the ones. And that I don't think you're losing anything by pulling CJ Stroud off the field a week, at one drive early, two drives early. So, keep CJ Stroud healthy, give Kyle McCord a couple reps of the ones. Is that something you think might make sense?
Yeah, no, and I actually wanted to mention that as well, and I think that's a good idea. Just to, if it's the first drive in the third quarter, perfect. Get them, allow Kyle McCord to play with the starters. That way he can see what life is like for CJ Stroud and have the offensive line out there, and just give him an opportunity to do what the starting quarterback gets to do. You want to see what he can do, so let him show it. And an ideal environment, even though there should be no such thing as an ideal environment for a quarterback. But I agree, let him do that. Of course, if it's 17-3 at half, all of this is out the window. Yes, we know, but I don't expect that it will be that. Tom, anything else before we get out of here?
If Kyle McCord does play a series or two at the ones, can I just put a couple bucks down on Kyle McCord finds Marvin Harrison for a touchdown? Those guys are very, very good friends. Went to high school together, played together in high school. Would not be the first touchdown that they have thrown one to the other. But yeah, I think that might be something to keep an eye on if you do see Kyle McCord with the ones on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be like a 7-play drive, and Marvin will have 7 receptions for 75 yards on that drive. And it's like, it creates an internal strife with the team, because everybody's like, "Hey, Kyle, I was open too," and Kyle would be like, "I don't know you," and then Emeka's like, "I'm Emeka," but it just becomes a big ordeal. So maybe, Tom, they don't throw it, just run it, and then McCord, of course, being a hothead, changes the plays so that Marvin can get the ball, and I don't know that it's worth it. Devon Brown should come in second quarter. I agree, Tom. Well said.
Hey, remember like 15 minutes ago when I was saying, you did a good job not, stirring up nonsense this time? I take it all back.
The first 30 minutes I was locked in, and then these last few minutes I was like, nope, just couldn't do it. Had to throw some nonsense in there. For anybody listening, that was all nonsense. Now, you should have known that. You should have picked up on it. If you didn't, I apologize. That's on me. But that will do it for this episode, this preview of the Arkansas State game. 12 p.m. Saturday. Tom, is that a Fox game?
No, because the Fox game is
It's BTN.
It's a BTN game, yes, because the Fox game is Alabama and Texas. And great news, we're going to be talking about the Alabama at Texas game along with a bunch of other games on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning episode that we'll probably drop it Friday afternoon at this point, because we might as well, because it's a preview of the weekend, so we might as well give you some time to listen to it. So you can find that in the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast feed or at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle.
Perfect. I'm interested to see who is going to win that game tomorrow, as Tom tells us. But that will do it for this episode. I want to thank you all, as always, for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.